Good evening, everyone. I'm Adam Herbst, a founding member of Excelsior NYC and a proud resident of the Upper West Side for the last 20 years. Welcome to the Vote 2021 District 6 New York City Council Forum, hosted by Excelsior NYC and the West Side Kojo. Tonight, we'll hear from the 6 leading candidates for the council seat to represent the Upper West Side. Each of them brings a unique set of skills and experience to this race. I want to thank the candidates for joining us tonight and for their desire to serve our community in what has become one of the more important local elections in recent memory, a period that will see us emerge from a novel pandemic in which many thousands of our neighbors have died, the cadence of which many of our work and worship and our schooling and the way we engage with our neighbors probably has changed forever. It also comes when the city is looking to rebuild an economy and faith in government during a very uncertain time. Finally, it comes when New Yorkers are locked in an emotionally charged debate on crime, gun violence, policing, and potential police reform. I should tell you that this evening we are joined by a very large crowd, which indicates the interest in this race and getting to know each of the candidates. It's our jobs as Upper West Siders to get to know each of the candidates, to know their strengths and challenges, their hopes and dreams, and most important, their capacity to lead our community out of the pandemic and into the next chapter of our city to meet the needs of all Upper West Siders. As Upper West Siders, it's our responsibility to get involved, to play an active role in civic life, and to get to know each of the candidates and their views on the issues that matter most to us, and of course, to vote on June 22nd. This primary will also be different because there's going to be ranked choice voting. Excelsior NYC will be providing you in the coming weeks with information about what that means. But to put it simply, it means that you can rank your top candidates in the order of your preference. This is to be done to ensure that the winning candidates receive more than 50% of the votes when it's said and done and avoid costly runoffs. So stay tuned for more information from us on ranked choice voting. Before we get started, I want to state explicitly that Excelsior NYC and Kojo are both nonprofits and as such cannot and will not make any endorsements. This forum is intended to be informational and all the candidates that met our inclusion criteria were invited to participate. I also want to advertise Excelsior and Kojo's May 26th Mayor Forum that will have the top 8 candidates. We hope you'll visit our website at excelsiornyc.org to get more information on that. I want to take this quick opportunity to thank Allison Brumberg, Adam Rosenberg, Michael Landau, Rabbi Avram Marmerstein, and Shelley Fine for helping to bring this forum together this evening. All of the work that they're doing to help lead up to Election Day to keep us focused and make sure that we all vote. Finally, this forum will be recorded, and all the views expressed are solely the views of the candidates and not that of Kojo or Excelsior NYC. So due to the pandemic, the candidates will be joining us remotely. We'll be joined tonight by Gale Brewer, Jeffrey Omura, Sara Lind, Maria Danzilo, Zack Weiner, and David Gold. I'm also honored to introduce my friend and co-moderator, Andrew Lebwohl, who is a native Upper West Sider and an attorney and entrepreneur. The rules were agreed to in advance, and each of the candidates will be given the opportunity to give opening statements of 60 seconds each. We'll then jump into questions for each of the candidates. Candidates may be offered the opportunity for a short rebuttal, and towards the end of the evening, we'll be doing a lightning round of questions that will be limited to yes or no answers only. Finally, we'll allow each of the candidates a 60-second closing remark. Okay. So the order of opening statements was determined by random drawing this morning, and I'd like to start with Sara Lind. Please, Sara.
Hi, thank you so much for having all of us. It's great to have an opportunity to speak to Upper West Siders and share my vision for the district. So I'm Sara Lind. I'm an attorney, a nonprofit executive, and a mom. I've been working on the ground in this community for several years as a member of Community Board 7. I'm an elected member of the school leadership team at PS 166, where my son goes to school, an elected member of county committee, and many more ways that I've been involved in the community. And through that work, I've seen firsthand the issues impacting our community block by block. Over the last several decades, homelessness has increased dramatically. We see more and more empty storefronts. Housing costs just keep going up. Our education system fails too many kids, and frankly, we're completely unprepared for the climate crisis. But it doesn't have to be this way. We just need leaders with the conviction to act, and I'm ready to take bold action on day one. So I'm excited to make New York City a truly 21st century city.
Thanks, Sarah. The next candidate will be Gale Brewer.
Thank you very much. I appreciate what you've done, Adam, and to Andrew, and also to Michael Landis at the Westside Kojo. I am Gale Brewer. I am the borough president and have been for the last 7 or 8 years. We focus on land use. We focus on appointments to many, many boards, not just the community boards, 1,000 people, and we train them in parliamentary procedure and land use and budgeting. We've obviously allocated funding for schools and parks and cultural institutions, and we can pass legislation with those who are in the city council. And before that, as you know, I was on the city council representing this district. So it does seem, why, Gale, are you want to go back to the city council? And there are 2 reasons. One is there'll be a lot of new members, maybe 35 new members. And I think that my experience in land use and budgeting, in knowing what makes sense and what doesn't, will help. And the second reason I'm going back is I love our neighborhood and I love our government. This government does not operate correctly. And I'm all about the government. There's too much overlap. There's too many people in silos, and there's not enough focus on what families and individuals really need. Government needs to work better, and I believe I can help with that. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Gale. Jeffrey. Jeffrey Omura.
Sorry about that, having some technical troubles. Adam, Andrew, thank you so much for having us here tonight. I'm excited about what Excelsior can accomplish here on the Upper West Side. I like that your mission is to bring this neighborhood together, get people to talk and listen to each other. I'm an artist, an activist, and a labor leader, an elected officer of Actors Equity Association. I represent more than 50,000 workers across the country, including 20,000 unemployed stage managers and actors right here in New York City. I got into labor governance through organizing. I was working at the Public Theater, helped create a campaign called Fair Wage on Stage, which gave our union leverage to negotiate record-breaking wage increases up to 83%. When the pandemic shut down our whole industry, I organized the Be an Arts Hero campaign, bringing the national arts community together to collectively lobby Congress for direct arts relief. We got $15 billion of direct arts relief. I'll be bringing my organizing experience to the Upper West Side to focus on small businesses and housing and homelessness, and I look forward to getting to know you all better. Thank you.
Thank you. Maria.
Hi, thank you, Kojo. Thank you, Adam and Andy, for hosting this evening. My name is Maria Danzilo, and I grew up in Midwood, Brooklyn. I'm a lifetime New Yorker, a 40-year resident of the Upper West Side. I'm a lawyer. I have 40 years of legal and business experience, deep experience in the private sector, which I hope to bring to City Council. One of the things I learned as a lawyer is to tell my clients not what they want to hear, but what they need to know in order to make informed decisions. And that's what I hope to do this evening, is really to tell this wonderful audience what you need to know to make an informed decision about who to vote for. Why vote for me? I am deeply committed to this neighborhood. I'm not a career politician. I am deeply committed to bringing back our neighborhood, to bringing back safety, clean and safe streets, quality education for every student, combating the devastating mental illness crisis, and bringing back our small businesses. So I look forward to speaking with everyone this evening and hearing about the concerns that the neighbors have, my neighbors have. Our motto for our campaign is I hear you, Upper West Side, and that's something that we hope to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Zach. Zach, you're on mute.
Okay, there we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you everybody for having me. Thank you guys. I'm really excited to be here. Excelsior is something that I've been thrilled since I heard and read about to be involved with. Since I started running, I've been talking a lot about direct action and not waiting to get elected to get things done. I've talked about some of my priorities. The first and foremost is filling vacant storefronts and making the Upper West Side a safer place. With empty storefronts, I was actually this past weekend, we accomplished our first goal of starting a pilot program for my initiative, Startup Retail. We were on News 11, Pix 11. If you search Zack Weiner or Bocho Peters, it was a very successful pop-up that we facilitated with a landlord using a revenue sharing agreement. We proved the concept, it went really well, and you're gonna start seeing more examples of it. And that's why I wanna be in office, so I can organize that and do that even further. We have an event coming up with a candidate from Brooklyn who is an advocate against gun violence. And we're gonna have some direct action on that as well. So please vote for me, give me official power, help me make this easier and larger and grander in scope, so I don't just have to use my volunteer campaign to get this stuff done. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Zach. And finally, David. You're on mute, David.
I see. Okay. You can hear me now. I'm David Gold. You can't hear me?
Good, yes.
I'm okay. All right. Thanks a lot. I'm a lifelong New Yorker. I was raised on the Upper West Side. My wife grew up in the neighborhood as well. We've raised our children here. My wife's and my parents also live in the neighborhood as well. I'm a lawyer and a PhD, and I lead Democratism, which is a nonprofit that's working to advance our democracy. I'm running because I believe there's a need and also a hunger for real change, and we have to think big and creatively about it because now's our chance. So as a council member, I'll work for 2 improvements to our democracy that would dramatically improve our trajectory. One is a hyperlocal voting system that allows neighbors to decide together what's most important to us and shift resources accordingly. It can address many longstanding problems, including empty storefronts, affordable housing, and more. And the other is legislation that I'll introduce in the City Council so that New Yorkers can join a national vote to end the Electoral College and create fair representation in Congress. Our current system is anti-democratic and anti-city, and to create the city we want, we need to claim our fair share of power in Washington, and local legislatures must lead the way. So thank you again. Really look forward to the discussion.
Okay. Thank you very much. That concludes all of the opening statements. What I'd like to do now is turn it over to my co-moderator, Andrew Lebwohl, for the first question of the evening. Andrew? All right, Andrew, we're having some technical difficulties on the mute button. So I'd like to ask all the candidates to come back on the screen now. So if they can start their video.
I'm here now. All right, thank you everyone. Thank you so much everyone for being here. Our first question will start with Maria and then proceed through everyone. And the first question is the following. Current Upper West Side City Councilwoman Helen Rosenthal has supported a stock transfer tax. The head of the New York Stock Exchange has said that the financial industry would leave New York if such a tax were ever implemented. What do you think is the best way to raise revenue? What do you see as the best relationship between the city government and the tax base? And how would you approach fiscal management of the city? 2-minute answers.
So in other words, a nice, easy question to start off the night. First off, I don't agree with the proposal that Helen Rosenthal is supporting. So let me just say I don't agree with that. Second, in terms of bringing, what we need to do is keep people in New York. We want New York to be a place where people want to live, not leave. And so to do that, I think we need to make sure that the city, we have a good quality of life here, and we need clean and safe streets. Now, I had a conversation this morning with my neighbors that was very concerning. We are seeing a significant uptick in anti-Semitism and crime in the neighborhood, and we need to talk about that. And that's number one. And people are saying they don't want to, they're not sure they want to stay in New York. They're not sure they want to stay here. And I think that if we're going to have a vibrant city. We need to make this a place that people want to live in. And to do that, we need to focus on public safety. We need to focus on clean streets. We need to focus on making sure our education system works for everyone. We need to have good options at all of our schools for all different types of learners, including accelerated learners. And we need a thriving small business community. And to have a thriving small business community, we must lower taxes. So I stand for making the city a place that is welcoming to people. And we have to have taxes here. We cannot have our finance industry leaving the city, and we cannot have those jobs leaving the city because we are misguided in how we are approaching business. So in terms of raising revenues, one thing we need to do is keep our businesses here in New York. We need to keep our people here in New York. We need to keep our families here in New York. We need to keep our tax base here. And we cannot do that if the streets are unsafe. And we cannot do that if we do not support ways to keep our police working with us and available to us and fully funded so that they can do the job they are intended to do. And in terms of recent events in what's going on in the world and how that's playing out and how that's affecting us, we have an issue here that is going to get worse if we don't take it seriously. And so in order to keep New York doing well and a place that we want people to live in, we must make sure that our streets are safe. And that means addressing all the issues that we need to address. Thanks.
Thank you so much. The next candidate will be Jeffrey Omura.
Hi, thanks. So first off, I'm incredibly grateful to President Biden for the American Rescue Plan and providing $12 billion to New York State and $6 billion to New York City to help us fill our budget deficit. That is a huge help. So as we move forward, as we get our economy moving again, we've got to make sure we're set up for success for next year's budget. If we need extra revenue, there are 3 taxes that I would propose. And I think these are all progressive taxes. A pied-à-terre tax on luxury condo buildings for people who don't live in the city, or perhaps shell companies that own property here, but leave it empty for most of the year. A vacant storefront tax we've got storefronts here on the Upper West Side that have been sitting empty for years, some over a decade. I'm proposing a tax on that until they fill that space. And then third, a tax on digital advertising. States around the country, Maryland was the first one to introduce it. I think we could have one here in New York State and raise quite a bit of revenue. Separately, we've got to start tracking every single dollar this city spends. I'm concerned particularly about our Department of Homeless Services. I don't think the city's done a great job of tracking where that money's going. We found out about some corruption going on just in the last few months. So the next city council has to take responsibility for finding out where that money's going. Finally, I'm proposing an arts and culture recovery plan. I want every candidate for every office prioritizing the revitalization of arts and culture because it's what makes New York, New York. It's why people live in this city. It's why 65 million tourists visit New York City every year. That's how we get our economy moving again. New York's economy doesn't start coming back until the arts and culture sector comes back. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next candidate will be Mr. Gold.
I think there's a number of ways that we can improve our financial situation. Before even talking about the need for additional taxes, I'd like to mention that I'm proposing a democratic method for resource allocation that I mentioned, which costs nothing and will allow us to decide together which things are most important to us and shift resources accordingly. People who are interested in it may find an actual interactive demonstration of how it works on my website at davidgold.nyc/DRA, that's Democratic Resource Allocation. And you'll see that it's a literally government revenue neutral way of accomplishing a lot of things that we might otherwise think that government needs to do. Furthermore, I talked about claiming our fair share of power in Washington. Right now, we are getting the kind of help that we need in an immediate way from Washington, but in general, we don't. because our votes as New Yorkers are not counted equally. So I've proposed a way to attack that issue. And finally, I would say there are ways that I think we can also improve our tax base, such as by reforming our property tax system, and especially with some action from the state that we can help pressure the state to do, we could make a much fairer and better system to support what we need to accomplish here.
Thank you so much. Next, we'll have Ms. Lind.
Great, thank you. This is a great question. It's really important. I think Jeffrey and David both made some good points that I'm gonna just maybe touch on and not restate. Yeah, we definitely need federal government support, and it needs to be ongoing. It's something that, to David's point, hasn't always happened because our government has an inherent bias against cities. But we know that the federal government is the only branch of our government that can carry a deficit and spend on things like universal health care without, we have to balance our budget. So that's really critical in the long term. I also think we definitely should reform our property tax system. There are ways that we could get a lot more money out of it in a way that is, responsible for taxing the properties that are worth much more than they're assessed at right now. I want to say, I do think it's important that the wealthiest among us pay their fair share of taxes. I'm not talking about people earning, $500,000 a year. I'm talking about the billionaires, the people with multiple homes, the people with, yachts that they go to. So, these people, maybe they're going to flee New York City if we tax them. Well, we have to make New York City the kind of place that people want to be. And I think it is that. And to Jeffrey's point, I think the most important way to get there is with that arts and culture revival. We get the arts back. That's why people want to live in New York City. And people leave sometimes and then they come back because there's no place like it. So I think that the kind of fear mongering about taxpayers leaving the city can be overstated sometimes. When we make this city the world-class, amazing place I know it can be, people will be here even if they have to pay taxes. It's always been that way, and it will continue to be that way. And then also, we want to keep our families here. We do have to make sure we have excellent education. Making sure that we have a great school system is critical to making sure that people are staying in the city. That's why I support making sure that we have enrichment opportunities in every classroom, not the kind of siloed and scarce G&T program we have right now. It's not enough. We need to make sure every school is offering an excellent education to every student. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Weiner?
Yeah, I don't think now is a very good time to be raising taxes in the next 2 years. People do leave. People definitely have left in large numbers, and it's a small group of people, but they pay an enormous amount of the taxes as is. And that's how we fund a lot of the things that make the city desirable. And that's how the city stays that way, like in the 70s, when they left, and then it was a disaster for decades. But the thing is, down the line, we'll see how the budget turns out. But in the immediate term, there's some actions we can take and have to take to make the city desirable and bring people back. Like Jeffrey mentioned, we have over 60 million tourists. That's the lifeblood of New York City. It's the lifeblood of the neighborhood to a large extent. One idea I hit on in my opening statement, startup retail, and this is something else Jeffrey kind of hit on in terms of the tax for vacant storefronts. So these landlords, they're in a huge bind. They can't lower the rent in many situations because it'll affect their mortgage. It's an issue with the market that cannot be readily corrected, and it's preventing them from making arrangements that could help, allow for more small businesses. What I'm proposing is a program which is a revenue sharing program, and it essentially amounts to having a pop-up shop 3 to 6 months, and instead of paying any rent, they don't have to pay $1, no rent. They just pay a cut of what they make, gross, not profit, and utilities. So this is something that can work, and it's something that did work. I did it this past weekend. We had Abocho's Closet. He's an American hero. He's 12 years old, owns his own thrift shop, Abocho. And we had him on open his shop up for a weekend over on 60th Street, just closed tonight. It was on Pix 11. We worked out a revenue sharing agreement with a vacant space. We made it a huge success. A lot of people turned up. A lot of clothes were sold. And we could do this all over. There's 66 empty storefronts. Thanks. There's 66 empty storefronts on Broadway. And all of those storefronts are prime real estate for great innovative new businesses that can make the neighborhood vibrant, because that's key. That's vital. That's the next step, is people have to come back to the city. People have to stay in the city. It has to be a fun, awesome place. And that's really what startup retail is about. And that's something that startup retail can get done. And we do have some of the bailout, the American Jobs Plan. And I think that's, that can carry us forward. And just in the next couple of years, I don't think it's smart to be taxing and raising taxes. We need everyone to stay. We need to maintain our tax base. People do leave. They are leaving, especially from our neighborhood. I think like 30,000 people left. It's astounding. We cannot be, we can't keep doing this. It'd be terrible.
Thank you. Finally, Ms. Brewer.
To be specific on the stock transfer tax, I do not agree with Helen Rosenthal on that. Every progressive economist I talk to says companies could take off for London or maybe Paris. So I disagree with her on that topic, to be specific to your question. But how do we get people back, and how do we increase the tax base? I think really strongly, and I hear from the unions more than anybody else, the issue of public safety. Midtown is still pretty empty. Downtown is still pretty empty. Those folks have got to come back in order to have the tax base increase. And so it obviously is, it's not only the hate, anti-Semitism, the anti-Asian hate that's somehow taken over. In many cases, our city is horrific, and certainly on the subways. We've got to make the subway safe. That's how you bring people back. And the NYPD is only part of it. I've been talking to them endlessly. There is this other human service, social service component. I can't say I have seen it working effectively, but that has to work. The other issue for small business, Manhattan has this horrible commercial rent tax. And particularly between Maury and 96th Street, for the entire island, it exists. We've been trying to get rid of it, particularly for the storefronts. We have not been successful. So that would be an example of how to bring small business back. The tourists are incredibly important for the tax base. Obviously, we want the international in particular because they bring more, but that was 97,000 jobs. And I also just want to talk about education. Obviously, that's part of it. But you have to follow the money. I heard that earlier, whether it's for rainy day, the most of this American Rescue Plan money is going to the Department of Education. Is it really going in the right place? And the question there is, in order to bring the city back, I think I've just listed about 3 or 4 different things that have to take place. But the pied-à-terre and the vacant stores, those are state decisions, not city. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. This next question, I will be giving 2 minutes to each of the candidates. So the mayoral race has become focused on rising crimes across the city. On the Upper West Side, there has been a rise in both violent crime and in petty crime. How would you enhance the physical safety and the feeling of safety for neighborhood residents? And what would the police role be in your approach? I'll first give that question to Jeffrey.
Sure, it's been a really difficult year for a lot of us. Last June, we saw protests in the street after the murder of George Floyd. And I think people were pretty loud and clear that they wanted a different kind of policing. So I think it's important that we walk and chew gum at the same time. We can make sure we've got accountability and oversight in policing. And I'm proposing 3 different ways to do it. We renegotiate the police contracts. We require advice and consent of the city council to confirm the police commissioner. And we give the Civilian Complaint Review Board disciplinary authority. Separately, we've got to make sure we have a productive and collaborative relationship with the police. And we're lucky that we have 2 of the best police precincts right here on the Upper West Side. I've been sitting down with local police leaders to get a better understanding of what they've been experiencing. And we need to encourage them to be present, visible, and responsive, walking around the neighborhood, getting to know people and being present when crimes happen. We've got to get people back to work. I think a lot of the crimes we've been experiencing can be contributed to our 12% unemployment rate. People are pretty desperate right now. We got to get people back to work and kids back to school. They have way too much idle time right now walking around the neighborhood. A lot of residents tell me they feel unsafe walking down the street because it's so dark and businesses close at night. There are less people around. That's an easy fix right there. Let's light up the streets. Let's light up the vacant storefronts. We can work with property owners to do that, to make people feel more safe and secure on our streets. Let's get rid of scaffolding. It's staying up too long. We need a time limit. We've got to work with property owners to bring that down. And then we've got a mental health crisis that is affecting those who are living on the street, and we're experiencing it with hate crimes across the city. We need permanent supportive housing for our unhoused neighbors, with mental health services, substance abuse services, and job training to create stability, get people back on their feet. And then we've got to make sure that our police are trained to ask the right questions when they arrive on crime scenes, so that they're collecting the right data when a hate crime happens. We found out last year there were a lot of anti-Asian hate crimes that were miscategorized as anti-COVID hate crimes. And so those crimes will not be prosecuted. We got to make sure the police have the tools they need so that the perpetrators can be held accountable.
Okay, thank you. Zack.
So obviously this is a tremendous problem. I'd say number one in the minds of voters and neighbors, just ahead of empty storefronts. The answer that I'm putting forward and what I'm working on in my next step in direct action is something with which I think everyone agrees on, no matter where they sit, which is a community-oriented policing, where community leaders, community groups from block associations, different neighborhoods within the neighborhood, different sections, can have regular meetings and interactions with the cops and NCOs responsible for their areas, and have back and forth, tell them about points of stress where they're seeing crime, and where they're seeing issue with police officers and things are not working well. This seems to be one of the most effective things that we could do right now. And then going into 2022, when hopefully I'm in office or whoever goes into office, can really step up of having really ground level, really intense grassroots organization between the citizens and the police. We've seen great examples of this over at Duane Reade. There was a string of robberies. The block association stepped up, spoke to the police there, said we're having an issue. They put a squad car in front of the Duane Reade. It deterred crime. And now I go there and I don't see any more robberies. It's a big boost. And it's my favorite Duane Reade, so it was a shame. And then over at the 61st Street Amsterdam extension, where they were having problems, I spoke to the tenant association president, Patty, and she had been organizing meetings with 10 seconds. Wow, really blew past. Okay, so 30. Okay, good, thanks. She'd been organizing meetings with Lieutenant Rodriguez, the officer there, and they've been having monthly meetings and discussing these same issues, and it'd been a really good relationship, and they'd been able to find a really good balance between policing and avoiding any kind of official overreach. Whatever law we pass, it will be immaterial as long as we're not really focused on the ground game and what's going on with the people that are living there. I'm again having an event soon. I would love the other candidates to join me in helping me and organize this, with Harriet Hines, a candidate in Brooklyn. Her cousin tragically was killed recently at a prayer vigil. She's doing a lot of work on gun violence, and she's going to bring it to the Upper West Side and try to find a good balance between police cooperation and citizens feeling safe from the police and from each other. So I hope everyone will join me. We could do this.
Thank you. Gale.
Well, there is a couple of things. First of all, I too want to congratulate the 2-0 and the 2-4, and I know they have this neighborhood coordinating officers. It is not working as well as I thought. I don't think people know who the NCOs are. So I would say yes to the advice and consent of the police commissioner. CCRB could use more support, and scaffolding is up too long. I know there's a guy on homeless person on Broadway who's got bookshelves there. But I think there's two things that could be done much more effectively. One is just a coordination. I'm not clear. I talk, obviously, my current role constantly to the police. And one of the issues that I don't understand is how are we coordinating mental health and police? So what I'm told is Department of Homeless Services goes out if somebody's acting in a certain way, and then it be backup. But then the other day, there's cops. But the other day, I understand there's a new service, for lack of a better word, focusing on quality of life with NYPD and services if somebody is in a shelter or outside and acting violently. I don't know how that coordinates. And also, I don't understand generally. The other day I called 311. I want to see how it works. Somebody was really acting out of line. They said in 8 hours, somebody will respond. And then when they finally did close the case, well, they had the wrong address, even though I had given them address 4 times to 311. So government is not working. And I would say the first thing we have to do is get the 311, the 911, social services and NYPD to work in a streamlined fashion. That is not happening right now. The other thing is outsiders are coming into our community to commit some of these robberies, the banks, the Dwayne Reeds. Some of these Dwayne Reeds and targets need to hire their own security. They don't like doing it because then it looks like the enterprise is not safe, but they got to do that. It's not fair for NYPD to have to put a car outside. So I would say all of the above, but finally, the feeling of unsafe anti-Semitism, anti-Asian is real. And I have friends who are Asian who are afraid to walk down the street, and anybody who is being asked if they're Jewish while they're sitting and having dinner, that kind of outrageous situation to me is an assault that should not be taking place, all of which I have experienced with friends in the last month. So I would say that we've got to focus on the hate crimes, and we have to focus on figuring out mental illness, homelessness, police, and how we're really serving everybody in this situation. Government is not working.
Gail. Maria.
So as I've said many times on the many Zooms we've been having on this issue, that the first job of a public servant is to keep people safe. That is the most important thing that a public servant needs to do. And the question I have for people listening tonight is, do you feel safer today than you felt 8 years ago? Do you feel safer today than you felt 3 years ago, 5 years ago? I would say that we are going down in a direction that needs to stop. And I think, as I said in the beginning, what I want to do is tell you not what I think you want to hear, but tell you the information that you need to make an informed decision about who to vote for. I am not a politician, but I can tell you that my position on safety has been absolutely consistent, unlike several of the candidates that are here tonight this evening. For example, I do not believe that we should defund the police. Yet Sara Lind, Jeffrey Omura, and Gale Brewer, all three of them said in writing in the OWL's questionnaire that they supported, in Jeffrey's case, a $1 billion cut to the police budget. In Sarah's case, a return to 2010 levels. And in Gale's case, a change in the budget that would have resulted in a defunding. So I am not in favor of defunding the police. And I've been clear and consistent about that. You can't just suddenly ask the police to show up when you need them. You have to be consistent. And the question I have for voters is, are you going to vote for a candidate who's going to deliver the day after they win the election or come up with something new? I have been completely consistent. Commissioner Shea, all three people who I just mentioned said in writing that they thought Commissioner Shea should be fired. That's the commissioner of the NYPD should be fired. So these are facts that the voters need to know. We have to start telling the truth. In terms of fear mongering, I really take offense to the accusation that I am fear mongering. And fear mongering is real. And what I've heard time and time again from the candidates in this race, time and time again, is that crime is not real. Suddenly it's real. Wow.
Maria, thank you.
Just this morning, two people told me that they are afraid to have their children wear yarmulkes. Okay, so this is what we're facing right now. And this is a real concern that we have to face. We have to face up to it and make real decisions about public safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeffrey and Gail, I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond to Maria, but first I'd like to just finish, well, Sara, she also addressed you, and then I'll turn to you, Sara, and then we'll turn to David, and then I'll give 30 seconds for Jeffrey and for Gail to also respond. But first, Sara, please.
Great, thank you. This is obviously a very important issue. I want to say first clearly that nobody wants crime in their neighborhood. I think we can all agree on that. Nobody is pro-crime here. I want to say also, my husband is Jewish. We are raising our children Jewish. We're members of a synagogue here on the Upper West Side. So the rise in anti-Semitic hate crime is very, scary to us as well. And it's something we certainly cannot tolerate or stand for. I serve as a liaison to the 20th precinct of the police department. To Zach's point on community policing, there's a program that does just that. We hold quarterly Build the Block meetings where people are welcome to come in. We, regularly get many people coming to express to the police what their concerns are. Certainly, to Gail's point, it could be better. I think that we could do better outreach and get them scheduled, further ahead of time so more people know about the meetings. Listen, I reject the false dichotomy between public safety and holding police accountable. I think we can do both. Jeffrey put it, we have to walk and chew gum at the same time. I absolutely think we can do both. For holistic, long-term public safety, I believe we need to address the systems, not the symptoms. Crime is a symptom of underlying issues in our communities. When we invest in our communities and make them better places where people can create thriving lives, crime goes down. We know this. We know that the safest communities are those with the most resources. And to Gale's point that some of this comes in from outside of our neighborhood, we can't just invest in our neighborhood. This is a citywide issue. We need to make sure that the schools in every neighborhood in the city are providing an excellent education, that there are after-school programs so that kids have things to do after school, so that there are job training programs for high schoolers so they can get to work. We need a robust mental health care system that, actually provides real mental health care to everyone, not just those with expensive insurance or who can afford out-of-pocket prices. We need parks in every neighborhood. We need healthcare in every neighborhood. And I would just say, in terms of the budget, to address that, 2010 was a time when the city was very safe. Some of the things that the budget goes to right now are paying the malpractice costs. Can I just get a little extra time, because Jeffrey and Gale are gonna get time to respond to that point. So
yes,
paying the malpractice costs. I believe the police should be required, like doctors and lawyers, to carry malpractice insurance, so the taxpayers don't pay out those payments. The police insurance should carry insurance. Overtime is a huge cost in the police budget. For example, sometimes you see 20 police guarding the Columbus statue. I don't think that's a good use of their time or our taxpayer dollars. Thank you.
thank you. Finally, David, once you respond, I want to go back to Gale and to Jeffrey. David, please. 2
Okay,
minutes.
I agree with a lot of things that almost everyone has said, including people who disagree very strenuously with each other. That is, we all actually, I do think, agree that we need to have a safe city and a safe neighborhood. And I think it's also clearly true that it's possible to give the police the tools that they need, while also making sure that there's strong accountability and strengthening civilian oversight. I think one aspect that maybe hasn't been touched upon among the other answers is that what we're dealing with here, it's a real serious rise in certain kinds of violent crimes, and particularly shootings and murders. It's not really just a New York City problem. It's a national problem. Every single city, I think, in the United States, virtually at least, is facing a similar kind of problem. And New York is not among the worst cities, among the large cities, in how it's going. It's one of the better ones. So I think that's an argument both for keeping strong policing and not for going overboard in thinking that we have to, create all kinds of new police abilities that we didn't have before. It shouldn't stand in the way of increasing accountability. The cause of it is fairly obviously related to the pandemic, and the most important thing we can do is improve the economy, and it will improve, and we can take steps to improve it. And I'm proposing steps to improve it, and as it does improve, things will improve in crime. Finally, one more point in my last 10 seconds is the real thing we need to do is keep the guns out from New York City, and the guns come from other places. And the reason we have trouble doing that is because we can't get national gun policy, because the votes of city people like New Yorkers don't count enough in our federal system, and we need to change the system. That's truly the only way we can really address this problem.
Thank you. I'd like to give 30 seconds now to Jeffrey and 30 seconds to Gale after Jeffrey speaks to rebut or respond to Maria. Jeffrey, please, 30 seconds.
Sure, thanks. I think the police are the first ones to admit that they're not best equipped to deal with mental health calls or homeless outreach calls. I firmly believe that mental health experts should be the first responders. There's a really great pilot program with the FDNY, and I'd like to expand that pilot program. It's called the FDNY Mental Health Teams across the city. It gives mental health experts the chance to respond, and if it's a dangerous situation, the police are there in reserve as backup to make sure that everyone stays safe. Those are the kinds of reallocations of funding that I'm talking about.
Thank you. Gail, 30 seconds.
Well, first of all, I've never said that Commissioner Shea should leave. I don't know where you got that information. I know exactly where I've written whatever I've written. I too believe that the police department should be well funded. They do need to figure out how to deal with this mental illness. They are not equipped to do this. If you talk to Gene O'Donnell or anybody at John Jay, they'll tell you the same thing. What we need is plan B. We don't have a plan B to figure out with this mental illness and some of the other situations that exist on our streets that are making people feel unsafe because they are unsafe, what to do that is not going to, that's going to be effective. And the police are the first to say they cannot do it alone. So the issue is, what's the combination? It is not to get rid of the police commissioner. I've never said that. It is to figure out how to deal with this mental illness in a way that's productive.
Thank you. Okay, what I'd like to do actually now is I'd like to get a little bit more specific about how each of you would engage the police or not in addressing law breaking on the Upper West Side, and to specifically answer yes or no if you would be in favor of defunding the police. So one, specific about how you would engage the police or not in addressing the law breaking on the Upper West Side, and two, whether you would be in favor or not of defunding the police. I'll give this will be 1 minute, and I'll start now with Sara.
Great, yeah. So as I mentioned, I am currently a liaison to the police department, have been for several years now, so I would certainly engage the police. I think there are many situations in which it's appropriate for the police to be involved in investigating crimes that have occurred and investigating, there's certain, networks like we see with the illegal ATVs, for example, figuring out where those are kept, and then we can deal with that situation. In terms of defunding, Maria already laid it out for you. So I have said that I think we should go back to the 2010 funding levels approximately. I mean, I'm not saying that it has to be that exact number, but that those are the kinds of funding levels that I would support. That's well after 9/11 and the increase in funding we did there for, dealing with terrorism. So 2010 levels are well after that. They're much higher than they were in the 90s, obviously. I don't like the language defund the police. I have never used that. I've said explicitly on my website that I don't use that language, but reallocating and reimagining the budget for sure, reinvesting.
Okay, thank you, Sara. David.
So as a council member, I would try to engage the police with respect to what's happening in the district and throughout the city. And I'd also want to work with groups in the district who are concerned about both crime and anything concerning police activity. As to defunding the police, I don't support defunding the police, but I do think there are areas that the police have been traditionally engaged in that are not usually the best areas for police to be engaged in. Some of those are already being scaled back. And in general, I favor using armed people to solve problems only where armed people are necessary.
Thank you, David. Maria.
So we have seen an uptick in hate crimes, anti-Asian hate crimes and anti-Semitic hate crimes around the New York area. And, I could certainly, and I have advocated for making sure that the hate crime units in NYPD are fully funded. And I'm against the concept of defunding. I think we need public safety. We need to have we need the police to be funded in order to make the kinds of reforms that we are calling for. So we can't expect our police to be able to address and fix many of the problems that have been identified if they're not supported and we don't work with them. So I think we need to, the idea that we can get the police to help us when we feel like it is not something I buy into. I think what we need is a good relationship with our police. We need to fund them and make sure that we are also asking for and getting the accountability that we all know we need. But reducing funding is not the way to do that. And we must engage with them on important issues like hate crimes, gun violence, domestic violence, et cetera. Those are all areas we need our police.
Okay, Gail.
I'm not for defunding. I will say in terms of law breaking, there's three things. First of all, I have just written a letter as borough president on the dirt bikes and similar. There are huge numbers of complaints, and that's something that could be addressed at the gas stations. And the police department just had a press conference, I think, as a result of my letter. So that would be an example of something that could be addressed, and it is a huge complaint. But the issue of how do you engage in law breaking, it's a couple of things. A lot of these individuals who are committing crimes now have a history. And the issue is, what are we going to do about it? There's a no bail in some cases. We have to think of plan B. What are we going to do with these individuals who need help? Rikers may or may not be the right place for them, but what is the right place? And why are we not looking at something that would address so that they are not continuing to commit the same crime over and over and over again? I do think it comes down to not the agencies not working together. Domestic violence is on the uprise. I'm not saying it's necessarily on the Upper West Side, but it is on the uprise. And for the same reason, we're not finding places at the very instance where there's an issue and making sure that there is a response. I don't think that there's enough community-based organizations, not in addition to the mental health, working with some of these individuals. And I would say that that needs to be funded, whether it's curb the violence, social services. The combination right now is not something that government is focused on.
Thank you, Gale. Jeffrey.
No, I think it's a lot easier to antagonize someone when you don't know them. So I want to bring the police into more conversations. I think we're going to have a better police force if they know who we are, if they know who the members of the community are. So I would bring them in regularly to community board meetings, to PTA meetings, involved with community-based organizations and business improvement districts and block associations. That's how we start. We start by getting to know each other. As I mentioned before, I think there are places that we can reallocate money for mental health services and homeless outreach services, but it all starts with having a productive and collaborative relationship with the police.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Zack, finally, please.
So no, I don't think we should defund the police. I think we have a program, Thrive NYC, which has been managed disastrously. It was such a great idea, and it's just been run right into the ground. I have a transparency website up, mythrive.nyc, which we posted a few months ago and have tried to get people to the site. And it highlights how little resources how few resources are being allocated to the seriously mentally ill, and then how much is being allocated to people that are more, shall we say, neurotic. So that would go a really long way. That would really help. That would help deal with a lot of the problems we have there. As for dealing with the crime day to day, I know about Build the Block. I think it's a great institution. I think we need to do a lot more. I'm talking about something on a daily basis, that there's a grassroots organization that's interfacing with the police and the communities constantly, and can develop really close relationships so we can be on just a quick phone call with individual cops. I think that's going to be key in terms of dangers of police brutality, and then in terms of dangers of escalating crime. Got to have those relationships.
Okay, thanks, Zack. I'm just going to ask one follow-up specific question, and I'm going to go back through the order in the reverse now. With respect to shoplifting, some of you have mentioned shoplifting. I'd like to know, in your opinion, should the police be arresting people who are caught shoplifting in the community? Zack, please answer yes or no, and 30 seconds, why?
Yes, I think they should arrest people who are shoplifting. It's a crime. I think they should arrest them. I think that, once arrested, we have to take a really hard look at exactly how people are punished and what's the most effective way. Rikers is still in the process of trying to close Rikers. I mean, there's real dangers. It creates recidivism, but in the short term, we're seeing situations where people shoplift and then they're released, and then 20 minutes later, they're back shoplifting. And I don't think that benefits anyone.
Okay. Jeffrey.
Yes, I do. I've talked to some parents here in the neighborhood whose children have been mugged on the street. And when they go to the police to get action, they're told that, well, there's nothing we can do about it. I don't think that's right. I think it's creating a dangerous situation. And yes, I think those people should be arrested.
Gale?
Well, this is what should happen. There is those who have a previous record, and it's open and it hasn't been sealed, or they have a warrant, or they have done this many, many times in the past. Those people need to be arrested. If it's your first offense and you've never done this before, the Manhattan Community Court on 54th Street has a wonderful record of making sure that people do not do recidivism. So that's what I would say. It depends, and I think that there are those, but Rikers is a mess. So the question is, if you're sending people to Rikers, what are you doing? What's your plan B for fixing Rikers? And for those who are at the first time offense, Manhattan Community Court on 54th Street.
Okay, thank you. Maria.
I think that it also depends. I think that there are, the store owner really should have a policy on this. And sometimes what you want, especially if a teenager is involved, is to give them a warning. If, however, somebody is repeatedly shoplifting in a store, they need to be arrested, and there needs to be a consequence for that. So it has to, but I think a blanket rule is something that could be misused. So I would say it does depend on whether it's a first offense or not, but there needs to be an arrest if the person is a repeat shoplifter. The store owner needs to know that this will stop.
Okay, David.
Yeah, that's I more or less agree with Gale on this, and with I to tell you the truth, I'm not so sure about Maria's additional point about how much input I think the shop owner should have into it, but I don't know why I even need to introduce the thing I'm not sure about, but in any case, I think it depends.
Thank you. Finally, Sara.
Yeah, I think yes, if this is someone with a repeated, pattern of this, yeah, they should be arrested. But I think the more important question, honestly, is what we do with them then. And to Gale's point, there are diversion programs. I think we should have more diversion programs. We just know that locking people up doesn't work in the long term. They often end up getting more, kind of radicalized or more involved in criminal activity while in jail. So the more we can have programs that help people, build a better life, so they're not going back to that life, whether it's mental health treatment or job training programs, et cetera, I think that's the long-term solution.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I appreciate everyone's input. I'm going to turn it back over to my co-moderator, Andrew, for the next question.
The past week has seen an outbreak of violence against Jews in New York City. What is the appropriate response of the city to rising anti-Semitism? And how can the city engage not just with violence against Jews, but with rising anti-Semitism in general? These will be 2-minute answers, and we will start with Gale.
Well, it's really bad right now in terms of the in your face, people at dining, people on the street, people in the Diamond District, and that horrific incident just the other day in Times Square. It's not new, but they're very, like I said, I was having dinner with somebody and this happened to us. So I've seen it firsthand. I would say that there's two things that have to happen. I don't know how great the hate crimes task force of NYPD is, but it needs more officer, it needs to be more supported, and it needs to be investigating each and every one, whether it's through the cameras, through the surveillance cameras at the restaurant, on the street. That is certainly something that has to be done immediately. And these individuals have absolutely no right to doing that. And it's the same thing with anti-Asian. I think you feel equally terribly about those individuals. And so the overall picture, though, is even more complicated. Everybody says that there isn't anything in the schools, there isn't anything in terms of civics, there's no understanding of how to work with others. There's a terrible, terrible, no sense of the Holocaust, no sense of internment for the Asian community. There's no history. And that is, we got to start in a young age trying to deal with these atrocities and making sure that people understand that they were real and that they impact people, and their anti-Semitism, anti-Asian hatred in general has to stop. But in the immediate, whether it's funding, great centers of excellence that have been working on this, like the Anti-Defamation League and others, to make sure that they have the kinds of education and messaging and leaders, making sure that they say it over and over again. That's the other thing. We need to have constant leadership on this topic and not be afraid to say how horrific it is. You also have all the issues in the Middle East that are contributing to it. I know some people like Donald Trump here. I'm aware of that, but I don't think that he helped the situation. I'll be honest with you. So it's a combination.
Thank you very much. Zach? We'll go to you next.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's scary. I mean, my family is frightened, and my community is really scared. This is terrible to see, and it's not like something I've experienced before. I've definitely had experiences growing up here and there, rarely of anti-Semitism, but never where it felt like you know, at a group level. I think the NYPD must, you know, obviously pursue this as aggressively as possible and prevent this and be as good as possible on it. But I think something that would be really reassuring to the Jewish community is if there could be some sort of institutional statement and presentation and event with NYPD officers and Jewish leaders. I'm sure some of that's taken place, but if we could have that really regularly, really often, and really convincingly, I think that would help a lot, because obviously, you know, historically, we've lived in situations, my community, where the social fabric of very comfortable places unravels, and then the systems of authority and bastions of democracy don't hold up for us. So I have people asking me, do you think the NYPD really are defending us and will defend us if things got worse? I think they will. I definitely believe that, and I think that that's really important, that they allay those concerns and anxieties, and there's definitely ways to do that. So I think messaging is going to be key, and that could go a really long way for the fear.
Thanks, Zach. Sarah, your turn.
Yeah, you know, as I mentioned before, we're members of a synagogue here on the Upper West Side, and when we go in, you know, before when we were in person, you know, they search our bags. That's the only building on the Upper West Side where our bags have to be searched. This is very real, and the danger is there. So this is personal to me for sure. I agree with Gale, mentioned education. I can't remember the exact percentage, but some shocking percentage of Americans don't even believe that the Holocaust was real. We have to do better education on this and make sure that people understand, so we know that it never happens again. And also just education on, you know, being an upstander, education on how to, you know, spot hate crimes and help prevent them. So I think we do a lot in our schools. You know, at a community board meeting a couple months ago, we had the Hate Crimes Task Force come and speak with us. It's a combination of the NYPD, the DA's office, and others working on these issues. They talked about some of the restorative justice work that they're doing, which I personally think is especially important in a hate crimes context, because, you know, if you punish someone for committing a hate crime, it feeds their narrative that they have a reason to hate someone. Obviously, depending on the severity of the crime, some punishment will be necessary. But if you can also help them to understand, you know, the underlying issues, you're more likely to, again, prevent recidivism in the future and break up that narrative they have in their head for why they would believe this. So I think violence prevention programs, restorative justice, and strengthening the hate crimes task force would be critical on that level. And then education in the schools, I think, is really important.
Thank you. David?
Thanks. It's a horrific problem. It's personal to me. It's not new, clearly. We're experiencing something particularly terrible right now, but it's not new. From a police perspective, I think the most important thing is that every one of these incidents should be taken seriously and should get a really thorough investigation to get to the bottom of every one that it's at all possible to. And we should also have increased police presence in situations where it can be most helpful. In a larger social sense, I think that education is really important. I think it's just really important that everyone should learn about the history of anti-Semitism specifically. I think it's also important that everyone learn about other forms of hate crimes or other forms of hate and their own traditions. They're all the same, but they're all different. They all have their own histories, and the histories make a big difference to individual people understanding their own susceptibility to these kinds of hate. And I think that's just really important to solving these problems, or at least keeping them under control in the longer term.
Thank you, David. Maria, your turn.
So this issue is very personal to me. My husband is Jewish. My kids identify they're Jewish. My sister-in-law, my brother-in-law, my nieces and nephews are modern Orthodox. I also have Asian in my family. My niece is Asian. My great niece and nephew are Asian. So I'm hearing this on, this is really affecting me on all sides: anti-Asian hate crime, anti-Semitism. I have a grandmother who probably converted because of anti-Semitism. So we have, this is a very, very personal issue, and I would like to stop dancing around it. I think the most important thing is to have courage and is to stand up to any words or actions that incite violence against Jews or Asians, and to be bold and courageous in doing that. And I think we cannot go backwards in history. We have had a horrible history of anti-Semitism in this world, and we can't go backwards. So that means having courage. That means if you're affiliating with a group that spouts anti-Semitism, a group like JFREJ, which has endorsed 2 candidates in this race, that you denounce them and that you have courage to do that and say, I will not stand with groups that are supporting anti-Semitism. I will not stand with groups that are denying the existence of Israel. I will not do that.
Thank you. And finally, Jeffrey.
Shake your head all you want, Sarah, but this is reality. This is reality. This is reality.
I'm sorry, Maria. It's Jeffrey's turn. We will follow up.
I wish there were an easy solution to this. If there were, we wouldn't have to ask this question tonight. What happened in Times Square and in the Diamond District this week and elsewhere across the city is really scary. I know what it's like to be the victim or the target of violence as an Asian American man. I've been scared to walk down the street over the past year. Our elected leaders have to speak out unanimously and loudly against anti-Semitism. It is real. We've got to make sure we are equipping our police with the right training so they're asking the right questions so these crimes can be prosecuted as hate crimes. We've got to have bystander training for everyone so that when we see one of these crimes happening, we can step in and prevent it from getting worse. Our police need to be present and visible, especially in neighborhoods that have been targeted by this violence, and at our synagogues. They should be working with our Jewish leaders in the community. As others have said, we've got to teach our history. People have to understand that this isn't new, that this has been going on for thousands of years. As I've said about anti-Asian violence, if you know that someone else's history is your history, it's a lot harder to otherize them. We've had a number of really powerful Stop Asian Hate rallies over the last few months, where leaders from the Black and Latino and white and Asian communities have all come together to collectively denounce this hate. We've got to do this for our Jewish community because that's, I wish there were a better solution to this, but we've got to come together.
That's time, Jeffrey.
Move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah, we will give you 30 seconds to respond if you'd like it.
Yeah, I mean, I just, you might disagree with JFREJ's policies, but to accuse them of anti-Semitism is, I just can't. When you weaponize claims of anti-Semitism against your political opponents, it dilutes and weakens the actual real anti-Semitism that is actually happening. So I think it's incredibly dangerous to do that. And I just want to see if Gale wants to say anything too, because she's also been endorsed by JFREJ.
No, I agree 100%. Maria, I don't know if you know this organization. I've been part of them for many, many years, whether it's the Jewish Vote or JFREJ. They love Israel. They feel very strongly to fight anti-Semitism in every way that they can. It's an organization of folks who care deeply about our city and our country. And I think they would take great offense for you saying that.
Maria, we'll give you 30 seconds.
Sure. So I have done quite a bit of research, as have many members of the community, after both you and Sarah took an endorsement from this group, and they have backed policies that are clearly deny the existence of Israel, that clearly make it impossible for Israel to be a separate state. And we really need to stand up to that kind of stuff. They don't speak for the majority of Jewish people in this country. They don't.
That's your time,
so to take an endorsement from them, I think was wrong, and I think you should not accept it.
Maria, thank you. We're going to do one quick yes or no question, and we'll go with everyone in order. And this is a very simple yes or no question. And the question is, Do the police have a central role in protecting the community against anti-Semitism? We'll start with you, Zach.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. That's what I'm going to
Okay.
call if I'm getting attacked. I mean, I don't know how else I'm going to call.
Gale?
Absolutely, yes. I said that when I spoke.
Sarah?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Jeffrey?
Yes, the police should be involved with all of our community organizations.
And Maria?
Yes, I think they make synagogues safer. I think they make people feel safer. I also just want to add one more point about JFREG, and that's that they support BDS.
This was a
They
yes or no
support
question.
BDS. Yes, I just want to get that point in there.
I'm going to transfer this back to Adam. Adam has one note he'd like to make.
Just, as we're talking about this particular topic, I just want to say thank you and call appreciation to several rabbis in the community who have helped participate in this event and also have been instrumental in Kojo and Excelsior NYC's work. That's Rabbi Daniel Sherman of Westside Institutional and Rabbi Robinson from Lincoln Square Synagogue. So I just want to say thank you to the two of them for all of their work and for their leadership on these important issues that we're discussing. Andrew, back to you.
Thank you. This event is co-sponsored by the Council of Orthodox Jewish Organizations, and the concerns of the Jewish community are central to many people in the neighborhood and particularly to Kojo. We're going to have another yes or no question followed by a more substantive question. The yes or no question will be the following. Should New York City government agencies and pensions divest from Israel? And we'll start with you, David.
No.
Okay. Jeffrey?
No.
Maria?
No.
Sarah?
No.
No,
Gale?
and I sit on the pension board. I would never let it happen.
Zach?
No, and I think BDS, Maria's right, that is an anti-Semitic organization. So definitely no, and I agree with Maria about that.
All right. And now, this year, the Democratic Socialists of America tried to turn Israel into a wedge issue in New York City elections, demanding a pledge from candidates that they would not visit Israel for any reason. The Upper West Side has a historically large and engaged Jewish community. Tonight's event is co-sponsored by a coalition of Jewish organizations from the neighborhood. Aside from issues of anti-Semitism, how do you see yourself engaging with and advocating for the interests of the Jewish community of the Upper West Side and of the entire city? 2-minute answers. We will start with you, Mr. Gold.
The question is, how do I see myself engaging with the Jewish community on the Upper West Side? Is that it?
Advocating for the interests of the community.
Advocating for the interests of Jews on the Upper West Side. So I am a Jew of the Upper West Side, and I am a member of a synagogue on the Upper West Side. I grew up as a Jew on the Upper West Side. It's entirely part of the heart of my whole identity. I would have a hard time imagining myself not in being an advocate for the Jews of the Upper West Side. I would engage in conversations with the full range of politically and from a religious perspective, groups on the Upper West Side, and make sure that everyone's concerns and interests are thoroughly part of the public discussion. And it's just an important part of the way that I would view my entire project in my life. I mean, I feel this way about representing. Of course, I feel it's equally important as a representative for me to be representing everyone else on the Upper West Side as well. But that's one that isn't doesn't take a great feat of imagination for me. Let's say that.
Thank you. Jeffrey?
The Jewish community on the Upper West Side is as diverse as the rest of the city is. A diversity of opinion, diversity of background, of socioeconomic background. I think it's a hard question to answer just because I don't think there's any one kind or one opinion here on the Upper West Side. So I would engage with it like I would with any other group. I think my success as a city council member will rely on great communication and engagement with community members. So I'll be having open office hours here in my office in the neighborhood. I'll be meeting regularly with community groups, with faith-based groups, to find out what their needs, their concerns are, and make sure to loop them into the decisions that I'm making when I'm elected.
Thank you very much. Maria?
So as I said before, I'm not a career politician, and to move forward as a city council member, I need and want the support and involvement of everyone who lives on the Upper West Side, every member of the community. And so I have reached out, and I continue to reach out to faith-based institutions all over the neighborhood. I'm a local, I've lived in this neighborhood for 40 years. I raised my family here, and I am very much a part of the community. It is my home. I grew up in Midwood, Brooklyn, a predominantly Jewish neighborhood, and most of my family at this point are Jewish. So I'm part of this community. It's really important to me. But as we move forward, I would see the role of the community, of the faith communities in this neighborhood, as having a full seat at the table. My campaign slogan has been, I hear you, Upper West Side. I will continue to do that. I'm representing them. I'm a local. I'm looking to represent our neighborhood. I'm not looking to bring, I'm not going for higher office. I'm not thinking about this as a stepping stone. I'm not going to run for council speaker. I'm not looking to, mentor the young people on the council. What I am interested in doing is hearing my neighbors, working with my neighbors, and representing all of their issues and all of their interests, and making sure that the Upper West Side continues to be the safe and vibrant neighborhood it has been and should be and continue to be. I do want to say there are members of the community, Jewish members of the community, who have been in this neighborhood. Someone told me yesterday our family has been here for 100 years. So we have a long history of a welcoming place for Jewish people, especially in the 40s and 50s, escaping the Holocaust. So this is something, the history of this neighborhood and the connection to people.
Thank you,
is
Maria.
extremely important to me. Thank you.
Gale, you were addressed, so we'll let you go next and we'll add 15 seconds.
Thank you. So there are a couple of things. First of all, I want to thank the Kojo and Michael Landis, because I've been to Israel with them a couple of times, and I've worked with all of them. And I think one of their number one issues, which I've worked on for many years, is making sure that with NYPD, the synagogues are safe and the community is safe, and they meet regularly with the police officers, and I've done that with them. This is a very diverse community. I've helped JCC many times, supporting them with funding, particularly right now with the fact that they have tutors that are working with students in the schools, and I've supported that, as well as many other JCC programs, JCRC programs. And also, with Manhattan Day School, supported with, they've had issues with city agencies. And of course, individual rabbis call me pretty much every week with some kind of a constituent problem, and I support them and try to answer it. So I have to say it's a fabulous community. It's a very diverse community on all levels. And I think for the last 20 years, although I've been here 50 years, but in office since working for Ruth Messenger since then, 1978, I've been working with this community, and it's an honor.
Thank you, Zach.
So I'm Jewish. I've grown up in the neighborhood. I'm actually wearing, this is a Supreme Shema bracelet my brother got me. I definitely look every day to try to represent the Jewish community well, and I'm an ardent democratic Zionist. I do believe anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, and I'll speak out on that, which is a rare thing nowadays in my generation and in my circles. In film, I've tried to show that, and people come for Shabbos all the time from a diverse background, and I try to show them that being religious doesn't mean being exclusionary. You can hang out with people, you can have a sense of humor that everyone gets. Most specifically, though, I'm a yeshiva student. I went to yeshiva for 13 years. I've seen a lot of negativity, a lot of hate. I actually went to MDS, Gale. That's great to hear that you know them. Or of course you know them, but whatever. Anyway, I went to yeshiva. I've seen a lot of negativity towards yeshivas. That's going to be something, if I'm elected, it'll be big for me. I think it's a terrific educational system. I do not think it's something that needs to be attacked so much or at all. Filmmakers that I work with just came out of the yeshiva system and have made fantastic movies. People even from the Hasidic community. It's something I think, in fact, that the rest of the education system can learn from. So that's one of the big things I want to do for this Jewish community here on the Upper West Side, is advocate for Zionism, advocate for yeshiva education, and say that there's a way to do Judaism and do Zionism in the modern world, do it well, and make it, something that's really beneficial for all of the city and all of humanity. I think, obviously I don't live in Israel. I'm running here, but I do take inspiration from Zionism. I think, Zionism began as a utopian project, and it began as an idea that we as Jews have to get involved in politics again. And that's what I learned growing up, that was an important lesson from Zionism. And a lot of the people historically that I look to as leaders were Zionists and people from Israeli politics. And so I hope to take those lessons into the community here and make a step towards
Zack. Thank you.
Yeah, bringing it to the youths.
We're going to have a short follow-up specifically with Gale and Sara. JFREG is a very controversial organization. I'm sorry, Sara. Yeah, Sara, please go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. I did want to say off the top that I did not seek the DSA endorsement. I was not interested in it. I actually did a consultancy for the CIA on the specific issue of Israel and the Palestinian issue. And I would be very happy to go to Israel as a member of the council. Also, I haven't had a chance to say it yet, but David and I are actually members of the same synagogue. I was hoping to see you at the picnic, David, so we could finally meet in person.
Look forward to it.
Yeah, but our rabbi there, Rabbi Lauren, is absolutely my spiritual leader. I find her to be an amazing human being. And I think Jeffrey put it really well. Even within the Jewish community, there's an incredible diversity of opinions on many of these issues. So, even within SAJ, there's a diversity of opinions on these issues. So I would engage with the Jewish community the same way I would engage with the entire community of the Upper West Side, which is to say it's difficult to engage. And I've seen through my work on CB7 that we are trying all the time to get more people to come to our meetings, and it's very difficult. 100 people showing up at a meeting is seen as a huge success. There's 200,000 people in the CB7 district. So we have to find other ways to get to people, meet them where they are, and talk to more people than just show up at a town hall or a meeting or even one of these forums, which I'm sure is really well attended, but there's so many more people. So I would make a really concerted effort, and I put forth some plans I have on my website, saralind.nyc, community engagement proposals to really get out there and meet people where they are. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much. And we are going to have a short follow-up. Just Gale and Sara, people have mentioned the JFREG endorsement. JFREG is a very controversial organization in the Jewish community. Can you talk about addressing the tension there? And because JFREG does encourage political positions that are widely disagreed with in the Jewish community, how that would impact your policy choices and the issues that you advocate for. 30 seconds each.
I can start if you want. I mean, I do not agree. I think the organization is split on BDS. I did not support BDS. Let me be clear. They asked me that question. I said no. I work with everybody. And I can tell you, because I don't know if anybody's been out as much as I have on this call, but I've been in this community for 50 years. There is an opinion about everything. And so in terms of JFREG, it's a lot of people who have trying to make a better world, just like you're trying to make a better world. And so you may disagree with it. People in the Jewish community on one side may disagree with it. But like I said, I work with everybody. And so I think that they're trying their own way. I want to say one more thing. They work with me on domestic workers, which I really appreciate. I passed the first and only city bill on domestic workers, giving them some more rights. And JFREG was very helpful. So I appreciate that.
Okay. Sara, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I agree. JFREG does incredible work on progressive issues that I stand with them on domestic workers, on climate justice, on racial justice, housing justice. You may disagree with their positions, and that's fine. We all disagree on lots of positions, but there's plenty of other organizations that I disagree with their positions, but I'm not calling people out. Well, maybe I would, I guess, but I think it's policy. I don't think it's, they may have some positions that I don't agree with, but on the whole, I think they do amazing work, as Gale said, trying to make this a better world. And I stand with them on that.
Thank you very much. I'm going to turn this back over to Adam for the next question.
Thanks, Andrew. So we have about 30 minutes left in this evening. And just to remind everybody, we're going to have a lightning round coming up shortly before we give each of the candidates an opportunity to give closing remarks before the evening is up. But before that, my next question is going to turn to the Upper West Side, which is home to several NYCHA buildings. And NYCHA residents are also an integral part of the fabric of our neighborhood. Their buildings also suffer from tremendous neglect, unfortunately. How would you advocate for better building management and better services for the NYCHA residents of the Upper West Side? And what would your priorities be? I'll give 2 minutes each to each of the candidates. And I'd like to start with David. We hear you, David.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. For some reason, I thought I wasn't set. The question is, what would I do to support NYCHA and people living in NYCHA? Is that right? I'm sorry, but I had a technical.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like my question, just to repeat the question, is that how would you advocate for better building management and better services for the NYCHA residents? And what would your priorities be?
So I think that the key issue in improving NYCHA is making sure that there's adequate funding for NYCHA. So I would be a strong advocate for adequate funding. And then my general approach to almost every issue is to give people power. And so I would be in favor of trying to set up better systems that allow the people of NYCHA to have a direct say in the way their buildings are managed. Those are the, and well, also clearly there's been a great deal of problem with NYCHA management in general over the course of years, and that's also just an important aspect of council oversight that I would take very seriously.
Thank you. Next for Jeffrey.
David's right that we need funding. The city doesn't have it. NYCHA needs $35 to $40 billion of capital funding right now. The only way we're going to get that is from the federal government. And so we've got to work with our representatives in Congress to make sure that the infrastructure bill that's about to pass, that I hope is going to pass, it will include funding for NYCHA. Here locally, we have a number of NYCHA facilities. The townhouses on 91st Street have been without gas for 8 months. For 8 months, they have been without gas. That is inexcusable. If I were the city council member from this district, I'd be on TV every single day talking about it until it was fixed. The Amsterdam houses, close to where I live, has been under construction and has had scaffolding up for years. This scaffolding is blocking out the sun and attracting rats. I talked to a woman who lives on the first floor who says she can't even open up her windows because the rats will climb in. That's inexcusable. We've got to do better than that. And we've got to bring members of NYCHA into the decision-making process to make sure that however we fix this problem, they have weighed in on it, they've bought in on it, because they're the ones who live there. Oh, one other thing. We just lost the Western Beef grocery store that provides groceries to the Amsterdam houses. We've got to make sure we bring in another affordable grocery store there. Our seniors who live at the Amsterdam houses can't be expected to walk 8 or 9 blocks to the nearest grocery store and not even be able to afford the groceries at that store. Thanks,
Jeffrey. Maria.
So I agree with much of what Jeffrey just said about the deplorable conditions in the NYCHA housing. We've started addressing this at the community board. I attended a number of community board meetings around NYCHA, and the fact that they have estimate $32 billion to repair NYCHA. This problem has been going on unaddressed by our existing sitting government for 20 plus years. And the problem has gotten worse and worse and worse. It's been described as deplorable living conditions. These are our neighbors. These are people who live right next door to they're part of the Upper West Side. Yet, not a single NYCHA president has been on the board of our local community board. They have a representative, but the tenant president, there isn't a tenant president who sits on the community board. And so one thing we need to do is make sure that we have our tenant leaders participating in community board decisions. In terms of the deplorable conditions, there was a 19-page report that was prepared just 2 or 3 weeks ago and listed many of the deplorable conditions, such as the problem with rats, the scaffolding, the fact that the Amsterdam houses are covered in netting. There's security cameras. The NYCHA presidents with whom I met said that the security cameras haven't worked in a really long time, and crime is a real problem. One of the NYCHA presidents I met told me that she witnessed a gun killing right outside her apartment door. So these are deplorable conditions. And as I've said many times, it's on my platform, I've said it over and over again, we cannot deal with the issue of affordable housing in our neighborhood until we start treating our neighbors properly. And I would like to see our NYCHA residents get preference for any new housing that's built in this community, so we can start moving them into proper housing and fixing the housing that is there now.
Thank you. Sarah.
Great. So as not to be duplicative of many of the great things that were already said, I'll move along. I think, when I first joined the community board has something called our budget priorities. So we don't have any control over the budget, but we get to say what we want our council member and borough president and mayor to do with the money. So when I first joined it, our top priority was a kayak dock. And NYCHA was pretty low on the list. I thought that was completely unacceptable given the deplorable conditions, as very accurately described by others who've spoken already. And so I fought hard to change that and to make NYCHA funding our top priority in our district needs statement. It has been now for a couple of years. Again, we don't unfortunately control the spending of that money, so I don't know that anything's been done with that, but at least we were stating our values and saying that that is our priority as a community. So I was proud of doing that, and obviously more needs to be done. In addition to the scaffolding issue, I know others that I've spoken with at Amsterdam houses say another issue there is that there used to be job training programs and apprenticeship programs for teenagers and young adults, and that those programs were recently cut. I'd like to see those programs refunded and put back. In addition, there used to be some after-school programs at the community center there that were also cut. So again, this goes back to our budget and where we're putting our money, and budgets are moral documents. Where we spend our money matters. And when we take money away from something like a job training program or an after-school program, it leaves people without things to do, without jobs to give them a livelihood, kids without something to do after school. And that leads to increasing, issues in the neighborhood. So when we put our money where our values are, we do create safer, more holistic communities. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Gale.
Well, just on terms of NYCHA, I have been working in these developments and all through Manhattan for many, many years. So I have to say the 14 leaders from Amsterdam to Wise Towers to the Brownstones have all endorsed me. So there's 14 people who are the leaders. Polly Spain is head of her building. She is on the community board. She's an amazing leader. I just want to mention that. There are two things that need to get done. First of all, number one is tenant input. I sit in the Chelsea area where we figured out how to do RAD, which is a public-private partnership, and we did it with tenant input, and what a difference it has made. In that particular case, every single apartment will be fixed, and the new buildings will contribute to it, and the residents wanted that. So tenant input would be helpful. We know facts matter. Wise Towers is now being converted public-private, so I hope it works. There wasn't much tenant input in this case, and I was upset about that, but that's how that's doing. Harborview is going to get some nonprofit, is going to run a nonprofit, hopefully, if it works out well, and have a brand new building that will also fix up the apartments. The brownstones are the biggest problem. I have to say, Cynthia Tibbs, she's very much on top of the tenant input. I think that's where money needs to go, not to mention the roof on every single one of the NYCHA development. It takes money. And I think we've answered. You have to answer individual complaints and then try to deal with the overall money. With the federal support, I would think that this is the time that these buildings will get fixed up. There has been absolutely no money. And I appreciate the question, Adam, because I think probably more than anybody else on this call, but maybe anybody else in the city. I've spent so much time with NYCHA and trying to figure out what to do. They have a very good general manager right now. Vito Maturi has excelled, but there isn't the money to complete. So I would say you need tenant input. You have to make sure that's part of the money. And if RAD is going to be used, do it with tenant input.
Thank you, Gale. Finally, Zach.
A few things. I want to commend Gale. She's definitely done so much for NYCHA. The community board, there, to my knowledge, 2 NYCHA residents on the community board, and almost so many of the priorities are for NYCHA. It just seems so out of whack, and like we could be so much more effective if that were to change. The city council person has 130 grand in discretionary budget spending, and this year we're seeing $30,000 go to Alvin Ailey for minority diversity dances or something like that. I don't even know what that is, but something like that. But I think that's 30,000 that could be better spent on the wires that are dangling on the 6th floor. When I visited Patty Ryan's place and she points at wires across the hall and they're hanging and she says she has to cut them. That's something immediate. Day one, if I'm elected, I'm going to take that discretionary budget. I'm going to commit as much as I can to providing services and help to those buildings, because it's like just this ongoing years-long crisis. Richie Torres, in Congress, his career, he grew up in NYCHA. His entire career has been built around, congressman from the Bronx, has been built around trying to get help for NYCHA. He's actually a progressive Zionist, incidentally, which is nice. I would immediately invite him to the Upper West Side and try to work with him to bring specific help to our specific neighborhood and draw attention to our specific projects here, because I'm hyper local. I'm all about trying to take direct action and trying to get things done immediately. And NYCHA is this massive, colossal problem across the city. It is the largest public housing in the nation. It's going to be so much. There's so much to be done, but not as much in this neighborhood. There's fewer buildings. We can deal with what's right in front of us, what's right here, and we have a lot of resources at our disposal, fortunately, that if aligned better, I think could help a lot. Lastly, this empty storefronts, some access to empty storefronts, some small businesses coming out of NYCHA could be a great economic bridge into the community to have more of a connection between all of us and make some money and create some clothing and some decor, which could be great in the house, great in the apartment.
Exactly. 15 seconds. Okay. I want to drill down on, a few of you have addressed this, and I want to drill down a little bit more on the NYCHA question, and then we'll move on. And I'm going to give everyone 15 seconds to respond to this. Given a budgetary choice between NYCHA funding and Department of Homeless funding, what would be a higher priority for you? 15 seconds each. Zach, please.
Homeless funding or NYCHA funding?
Yes.
What was the second one? Oh, geez.
NYCHA funding or Department of Homeless funding? 15 seconds, please.
I would say NYCHA, because I think the funding has to go through Thrive for the homeless. It seems like it's going into an empty pit.
Again,
right
I'm
now.
asking for your priority. What is your
I'm
priority?
saying I prioritize NYCHA, and then I was trying to add a reason, but I guess I'm not going to get to because it's a toughie. I'm going to have to say NYCHA.
Thank you. Gale?
NYCHA for the following reason: it's housing people who are homeless. But let me tell you the problem. They're putting people in without social services, and they're not necessarily acting in a way that is supportive of the community environment. So NYCHA, but you need social workers, and the tenant leaders need to interview the people coming in.
Thank you. Sara?
It's really tough because, NYCHA is a federal agency. It should technically be funded by the federal government. That said, I don't think the Department of Homeless Services is doing very well with its budget. I think we need a housing priority, not a homeless shelter priority. So on balance, I guess I would go with NYCHA.
Thank you. Maria?
On NYCHA housing, we have to address the deplorable conditions of our neighbors. We cannot continue to allow people to not have gas for 9 months and to have rats coming into their bedroom windows. This is not something that we can accept in our neighborhood.
Thank you. Jeffrey?
I'm not quite sure how to answer this question. I can't imagine a situation where we would be asked to choose between the two. I don't think we do. But we do have a huge responsibility to take care of our residents who live in NYCHA facilities. These are, they do receive city funding, and we have to make sure that they are safe and that they are brought up to a respectable code.
Okay, thank you. And finally, David. You're on mute, David. You're still on mute.
I see it. I took it off. I agree with Jeffrey that it's almost impossible to imagine having to decide. I suppose that I do think NYCHA is a more immediate issue. I think the most important point here is that this is another reason why it's vital that we reform our relationship with the federal government so that we can get the funding that we so desperately need.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to throw it back to my co-moderator for one final question before we get into the lightning round. And from there, we'll still allow each of the candidates to give closing remarks. Andrew?
Thank you, Adam. YIMBY, yes in my backyard, is a phrase that means different things to different people. It can mean support for higher density and taller buildings. It can mean support for homeless shelters and affordable housing developments. Or for some people, it just means that developers are coming to ruin your life. What does YIMBY mean to you, and what is your vision for growth on the Upper West Side? These will be 1-minute answers. And we will start with Jeffrey.
So the Upper West Side already has the second densest neighborhood in the entire country, actually. So that's why my housing plan focuses on increasing the supply of housing across the city in order to bring the cost down for everyone, including those right here on the Upper West Side. And I'm doing that by focusing on taking our vacant commercial real estate, turning that into residential use, taking the basements and attics in all 5 boroughs, turning those into residential rental units. Things like that. Here on the Upper West Side, I'm looking forward to reimagining our streetscapes, making sure that our bike lanes are safe, bringing in more priority busways to speed up our local transportation options, and bringing in more trees and green space so that our streets are more livable.
Thank you very much. Maria?
So what YIMBY means to me is more green space, making sure that our housing stock, our existing housing stock is well maintained. That includes NYCHA housing and other affordable housing options that we have in the neighborhood. I definitely want to, I'm not in favor of tall towers. I've said that publicly and repeatedly. I think that there are loopholes in the tall towers laws that need to be closed, and they need to be closed without ambiguity in a very straightforward way. I think it's important for the people watching this Zoom to do their homework on the other candidates again, because they're not all consistent on this point. So we want to make sure that, and in terms of, we are the second most dense neighborhood in the country. And what I'm hearing mostly from people is concerns about our subways being overcrowded, our schools are overcrowded. If we continue to build, we need to get more from more for the neighborhood, more assets for the neighborhood.
Thank you very much, Maria.
Thank you.
Gale, we'll go to you next.
Okay, so 200 Amsterdam is the worst example. It's a tall building. We think they broke the law in terms of the zoning lot, but we were not successful in court. So that's an example of a building that's too tall beyond the zones. I would like to keep in the zoning because we have a zoning law. I'd like to keep in the zoning. I would also, this is where it gets hard. You're only under the current scenario able to add affordable housing 25% if you are sort of going above the zoning and needing city input. That's ULURP. So I would like to find a way in the future, different mayor, different city, that you can have zoning as is and affordable housing. Now that might be a takings law for those on this who are attorneys. But my definition of being YIMBY is yes to development that is helpful. In terms of open space, our parks are crowded, our playgrounds are crowded, so we'd have to have something what I'm calling for is a public realm czar, somebody to figure out how these 25 agencies who work in our streets work together. And that would also be a positive way, but stay within the zoning, build affordable housing.
We'll go to David next.
I think it's very important that we only build in the neighborhood in ways that are good for the neighborhood. And I think we have an important affordable housing crisis, and I don't think the right way to address it is just through supply. I think that the best way to address it is directly through a massive commitment of cash, credits, and vouchers to help rent-burdened New Yorkers pay the rent or become homeowners, and that will allow us to separate the issue of bigger buildings and increasing supply from issues around affordable housing.
Thank you. Sarah.
To answer the question of what YIMBY means to me, it means that we all have to do our part to solve collective problems, and that we must live our values in our own backyard, as well as speaking about them in the city as a whole or the country as a whole. I believe that we are in a housing crisis and we need more housing. I agree that supply is not the only solution. It absolutely is not, but I also think that vouchers can't be the only solution either. It just won't work because it will just drive up housing costs. So we need to have a multi-pronged approach to this. In terms of my housing plan, again, it's a citywide issue, and we absolutely must add housing in every neighborhood in the city. I think, Jeffrey has mentioned ADUs before. Absolutely agree with ADUs. Unfortunately, that relies on people making the choice to have an ADU and rent it out, which many people probably will, but not everyone. Again, it's just such a complex problem that we have to take many, many different approaches to it. But I would encourage you to go to my website, saralind.nyc, and read my specific housing plan and proposal that I've put out for how our neighborhood could do our part to help solve this problem.
Thank you. And Zach.
To me, I'd like to see a lot more greenery. I'd like to see us doing a lot of a better job in NYCHA and in general. Again, I'm really in on the stores. I grew up on 92nd Street. There was this amazing bookstore. It was like one of those bookstores from You've Got Mail, where they had like a mystery bookstore on one side, and then they had that other, I don't know if anyone remembers that, and then they had another bookstore of just general books. I loved it. And I want to see those kinds of stores come back. We have all these empty stores, and I speak to landlords, and they say they're willing to make a change and make arrangements on a limited lease, but still, I think that's going to go so far. It'll revitalize the neighborhood. It'll bring more foot traffic. Broken windows, that was only half the equation. There was also vacant lots was the emphasis. I emailed with the professors, and they talked about that was their hope. And what they've done in Philly is fill a lot of empty space, and that really brings down crime and it raises quality of life. And that's another reason why we want to make these stores full. And even if we can't fill them, we can make it public space. It's just, this is a huge part. This is Broadway. That's like the whole idea of Broadway, of these incredible stores and shows, and we have this opportunity. So that's big.
Okay.
That's big. Yes, my backyard.
Thanks, Zach.
Storetopia.
Okay, everybody, congratulations. You've now made it to the lightning round. So thanks for sticking out. We're going to do this very, very quickly. So simple answer, yes or no, or respond to the actual scenario itself. Okay, no explanation. First question in lightning round, keep gifted and talented programs, yes or no? Start with you, Maria.
Yes.
Sarah?
Expand to every classroom in every school.
Gale?
Yes.
Jeffrey?
Yes, and expand.
Zach?
Yeah.
David?
Expand.
Okay, thank you. Andrew?
Next question. Should we keep the 421A Affordable New York program? We will start with Zach.
I'll be frank with you. I need to research it more.
Jeffrey.
Further.
I don't think it's the best I don't think tax incentives for real estate developers is the best way to create affordable housing.
Gale.
It doesn't, it's improved, but it doesn't keep affordable housing for the life of the building. If it did, I would support it. But right now, it's only for the length of the abatement, plus the person who lives there. When they move, it goes market. Keep it affordable, keep it rent stabilized.
Thank you, Gale. David.
Probably not.
Maria.
I would say yes, but there's room for improvement and refinement.
And Sarah.
Yeah, not in its current form, but something like it, possibly.
Okay, stock transfer tax. Gale.
I want to not tax that. We'll be in London and Paris, so not doing it.
Sarah.
No.
David.
No.
Jeffrey.
No.
Zach.
No, we're getting a lot of, a lot of the taxes are coming from them already. The people are doing that. They'll go to London.
Maria?
That's right.
No,
They'll go right up.
Okay, commercial rent control. Sarah,
No.
David,
It depends. I have a better proposal, but it is sometimes necessary to have some version of
Thank you.
commercial rent control.
Zach,
No, that'd be a disaster. That'd be really bad.
Maria,
at the risk of annoying some people in my supporters, I'm going to say no to that.
Jeffrey,
I think it has to be an option. It's not the first option. There are many other things we should try before we get to that.
and Gale.
I would, not commercial rent control, but I would suggest that you have to find a way for the owner of the building to talk to the commercial tenant so
Okay.
that they have the opportunity to renew their lease or not.
Okay.
Okay, vacancy tax. Sarah?
I think there has to be a long window because it can be hard to find people. So potentially after a long period of time, not right away.
Maria?
No,
Jeffrey?
Yes.
Zach?
No, that'd be a disaster. It would help my program start at retail, but it'd be very bad for the city.
Gale?
I think it's possible, but we're waiting for the data. I have a data bill. It should be available in a couple of months. And let's see what happens with my data bill. Where are the vacancies? We don't know.
David?
I think it can be decided upon democratically through a democratic system that would make it effective. Otherwise not. Wish I had
Okay.
more time than that for that one.
This one is going to be a short answer question. Does the Upper West Side already have its fair share of shelter beds, or should more shelters be moved into the neighborhood? We'll start with you, Zach.
No, I don't think more should be moved in. We need to focus on more services for those that are already
Okay.
residing here.
Thank you, Maria.
I would say yes, we have our fair share. We're 9th out of 51. I know that there are
Okay.
some new shelters that are proposed, but I would say
Thank you.
we reached our fair share. Thank you.
Sarah?
I think every neighborhood has to do their part, but I would like to focus on permanent housing rather than this shelter system we have now.
Jeffrey?
I agree that the shelter system is broken. We need permanent housing because we already have shelters in this neighborhood.
So Sarah and Jeffrey, I just want to make sure that we're clarifying. You are saying that there should not be more shelters moved into the neighborhood.
I don't think there should be more shelters anywhere. Temporary shelters are part of the problem, cycling people in and out, not creating the stability they need to get people back on their feet.
And Sarah?
I would just clarify between shelters and safe havens. Safe havens being very short-term ways to get people off the street and then move them quickly into permanent housing, but not the kinds of shelters, congregate shelters that we've been using.
And should there be more safe havens in the neighborhood?
Yeah, I think it's important to have many safe havens because they're small. In order for them to be effective, they need to be very small, only a
Okay.
few people in them at a time. Yeah.
Thank you. Gale?
Permanent supportive housing, not shelters. I think even the one on 59th Street, I would like it to be permanent and not transitional.
Thank you.
Wish-ish, garrote,
All right.
etc. Like that.
David?
Road's great.
Likewise, permanent supportive housing. I don't think we need more shelters.
Okay. Street dining, should it be made permanent? Gale?
Yes. I love it.
Jeffrey?
Absolutely.
Maria?
Yes.
David?
Yes, I love it, and everyone in the neighborhood loves
Sarah?
it. That's the more important point.
We all agree. Yay, yes.
Wow. Zach?
Yeah, big fan of it. Yes.
Okay.
Last one. Should cars be allowed to go north and south on West End from the 50s all the way up to 106th Street? David, we'll start with you.
I don't.
Maria?
I love West End Avenue. I want to hear what the people on the avenue have to say about that before I answer it.
Sarah?
I assume you mean the current design as it is now?
That's right. There were times over the last year where sections of West End were closed off to car traffic. We're asking whether
Yes.
north and south car traffic should be
Yes.
allowed on West End. Gail?
Yes, to car traffic, and you know what the problem is? Trucks. There's not enough. The trucks are not supposed to be there. So somebody, I mean, we complain all the time. Stop the trucks. They're illegal. Yes to the cars.
Jeffrey?
I'd have to talk to community members who actually live on West End Avenue. They're the ones being affected by this. I have heard from a lot of people who've liked the open streets program on West End Avenue, but I need to hear more opinions.
Zach?
Yeah, let's keep it, and no more trucks. I'm with Gail. A lot of those trucks, and it's huge rumbling. They just come rumbling through. They shouldn't be there.
They're illegal.
Okay.
But car traffic north and south from the 50s all the way up to 106.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes.
Okay. I have one more lightning round question, and then we're going to go to closing remarks. And this one's near and dear to my heart. Once the vaccine is out of emergency use and it is approved for everyone, should students be mandated to get it before they go back to school? Yes or no? Simple yes or no. Jeffrey?
Absolutely.
Sarah?
Yes.
Gail?
Let's our kids back in school.
Yes, unless there's a medical condition. That's a yes.
Maria?
Yes, with the
David?
caveat for medical, of course.
David?
Yes, unless there's a good reason.
And Zach?
Yeah.
Look at this. 2 questions that we all agree on. This is amazing. I think we made history. So thank you guys. We are running over, but I do want to keep my promise allowing everyone to get their final closing remarks. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it in the opposite order of how we had given our opening remarks. So 1 minute each for closing remarks, starting with David.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me and hosting this forum. So I'm David Gold. I'm a lifelong New Yorker. I was raised in the neighborhood. As I said, I'm running because I believe there's an opportunity to make really important advances to how we do things that would allow us to build the kind of future that we really want here on the Upper West Side and in New York City. And the heart of my campaign is about how we can make that happen through advances in our democracy. There's a lot more about my specific proposals on my website. I think once or twice I referred to something that probably I was forced to say too briefly to make any sense. Please go check it out, davidgold.nyc. Also, I'd love to talk with people individually too, so please be in touch. My contact information of various kinds is there too. And thanks again.
Thank you. Zach?
My name's Zack Weiner. I so appreciate being here and being invited. I feel like my vision and Excelsior's vision align so perfectly. I got into this to take direct action, and out of frustration with hearing politicians all the time say, we need. They're in power. They should be doing, they should be delivering. And I try to demonstrate that in my campaign. I've motivated 10 people to volunteer. They come 3 times a week, either from within the Upper West Side to the Upper West Side. These are people who are not political, a lot of people from entertainment, and they're doing work in the community. And if elected, I can expand that group, and I can be delivering help and answers to the voters and the constituents on a daily basis. You have a problem with your building, you have a problem with an issue of safety in a neighborhood, you want to interface with someone between the police and between the community. I want to be there every day, all day. That's my background. I'm a film producer. I'm all about organizing. I'm all about getting things done. And I want to do that for this neighborhood. So please, starting June 10th through June 22nd, vote for me and look out for our next direct action, me and Harriet Hines and I. Well, I had to end on a grammatical error, but okay. That's fair.
Maria.
So thank you very much for hosting. I want to just say that even though we agreed on a number of the lightning round questions, I think there are very significant differences in the candidates here. And I implore everyone who's watching this to do your homework and learn about the candidates' real platforms. Read their websites, because I think you're going to see something very different from how they present on these Zooms. As a lawyer, I have the skills and the knowledge to fight for you. My platform is very straightforward. I haven't wavered. I've been completely consistent from day one. I ask that you take a look at the JFREG website to get some information on exactly the kind of causes they support. And most of all, I implore everyone to please vote It's very important that you get your voices heard. This is a very important election for the city, and please vote for me, #1 for city council. Taxes matter, quality of life matters, a transparent government matters, and I will deliver all of that. I will deliver honesty, integrity, truth, and won't waver.
Thank
I'm
you.
not a chameleon, and I'm not a career
Jeffrey.
politician. Thank you.
First off, thank you so much for hosting us tonight, giving us this opportunity. As challenging as this year has been, I've had the time of my life over the past 6 months of this campaign, talking to our neighbors about what they've been experiencing over the past year, what's on their mind, and how they want this city to move forward and start working better for everyone, how to create a safe, prosperous, and welcoming neighborhood. And I got into this race after the pandemic shut down my entire industry. I'm running to make sure we have at least one arts advocate at the table, because access to arts and culture is the reason many of us live in this city, and why over 65 million tourists visit New York City annually. New York City's economic future depends on the revitalization of arts and culture. I'm very proud of our grassroots campaign, powered by many of the New Yorkers who have been hit hardest by this pandemic, arts workers. A third of our campaign's contributions come from individuals who list their occupation as unemployed. I'm ready to bring my strengths and experience as an artist and a labor leader to City Council to revitalize the arts and culture sector, to support our small businesses, to address housing and homelessness, and together we'll create a renaissance for all. Thank you.
Gale?
Okay, thank you. So I am Gale Brewer, and I appreciate both Excelsior and Westside Kojo, and I really enjoyed tonight. I'm running for a couple of reasons. #1, just so you know, I've been endorsed by about 50 organizations, including cultural groups, including environmental groups, and including all the West Side clubs, the 504 Democrats, which are those who support the disabled, and Stonewall. And I think that after listening to this conversation and others, we all know that coming out of this pandemic is really challenging, whether it's a small business, whether it's this mental illness, whether it is the schools, whether it is anti-Semitism, Asian, and of course, also just general racism. We need to come together. And I think the one way to do that is not make mistakes of the past and try to move forward with good ideas, be they for the public realm, be they for housing, or be they for education. And I have the ability through all my past land use, budgeting, and just knowledge about how our city works, the government works, to do that. So that's why I'm running. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'm Sara Lind. Thank you for having me. I'm an attorney. I've worked in the private sector. I've run nonprofits. I've worked in the government, and I've worked on these issues in our community for several years. I have the experience to do this job, and I have bold plans to make our neighborhood better. I encourage you to go to my website, saralind.nyc, to see my specific stance on issues and plans for the neighborhood. Some of the ones I'm most excited about are, I believe we can end homelessness with a different approach to how we address the issue in our city. And I have a really exciting plan to revitalize Broadway in our district, to fill our empty storefronts, to create a much more welcoming streetscape, bus lanes, just make it much better for all of us to use the space. Early voting starts June 12th through June 20th. Election day is June 22nd. I encourage you to vote. And I would love, of course, if you would rank me #1, but if not, I'd love to earn your #2 or #3 vote as well. So get out and vote, and check my website, saralind.nyc. Thanks.
Okay. I want to say thank you to everybody who has participated. I want to say thank you to my co-moderator and the Excelsior NYC and the Kojo team. We are putting together a police forum. We are putting together a May 26th mayoral forum. Please go to excelsiornyc.org to get more information. And once again, I'm also reminding people that we are going to put out in the next week or so information with respect to ranked choice voting. So please look for that as well. Thank you for staying a little bit over, and good luck to all the candidates. Thank you so much, and have a good evening.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.